Ukraine waited for Russian commanders to relax, then lit a mine fortress from the inside in less than 9 seconds.
"2:03 a.m. and before radar officers could register the anomaly, Warehouse 7 erupted from within, a pressure flash punching through steel ribs and sending thermal alarms screaming across the Saransk industrial grid. Not a missile, no visible launch trail, just a sudden internal shock where over 140,000 mines sat stacked for shipment, and a sensor board blinking from calm to catastrophic in one breath. Only then did the sky reveal the truth. 48 UAVs drifting low along canal beds and service tracks, unaffected by 500+ watts of electronic jamming, navigating by terrain vision instead of satellites. Moments earlier, a supply truck rolled in. Behind it, 4 silent airframes rode the heat of its engine, slipping past the gate with the routine of a night shift handover. If you were watching those screens, would you have sounded the alarm fast enough? Or trusted routine until the walls shook? 2:03 a.m. October 22, 2025. Moravia slept under a cold sky, street lamps glowing like faint embers on concrete veins. And then those veins trembled, not from artillery, not from jets, from something smaller and far more deliberate. From 3 covert launch belts spanning 52 miles, 48 autonomous UAVs rose in disciplined tiers. No roar, no glare, just motion. 18 skimmed treetops at 25 feet, 17 traced irrigation canals and rail beds, 9 drifted just above freeway sound walls, and 4 rode so low their wings brushed orchard fog. The swarm didn't fly, it flowed, each airframe no heavier than a suitcase, each built for less than $2,300, and each wired into a command logic months in the making. Then the siren that wasn't a siren. The CRA-4 jammer ignited, throwing out a 550-watt blanket across every known navigation band. A lesser fleet would have fallen from the sky like leaves in still air. But these drones pivoted to something scarier than GPS. Vision logic fused with inertial memory, comparing every curve of asphalt and every tree-line contour against 7-point satellite tiles preloaded weeks earlier. You could blind a signal, you could not blind the Earth. The defenders felt confident. For 6 seconds, a Panzer battery locked, 12 missiles launched, perfect intercepts, 12 targets gone, then another volley, another 12 erased, 24 kills, $5.4 million of interceptor metal wasted on foam, fiberboard, and recycled chips. The reload cycle began. 73 seconds. That was the window. At 2:09 a.m., radar screens bloomed with chaos. 30 ghost returns, impossible bearings, altitude spikes that meant nothing and everything. Operators scanned for truth. None existed. Inside that storm, 4 quiet signatures banked left behind a lone fuel truck. Invisible to emotion, invisible to habit. Timing tightened to a blade's edge. 1 gap, 1 heartbeat. 1 step into a night that would not forgive doubt. The breach wasn't heard, it was felt. And in seconds, the question of the night shifted from can they reach us to what happens now that they already have. 2:09 a.m., 2:11 a.m. Silence did not break, it tightened. The battlefield had been shaped in the air, but victory would be decided among steel, concrete, and human reflex. Behind the decoy's artificial storm, 4 authentic strike drones drifted in the slipstream of a familiar silhouette. A supply truck scheduled, tracked, and quietly confirmed over 11 nights of surveillance. The gate sensors blinked through dense autumn mist, trying to see heat through vapor thick enough to swallow headlights. Commercial-grade infrared struggled, algorithms stalled. The human guard, hearing alarms, radio chatter, and the faint static of panic, made a decision that history often hinges on: routine over doubt. The gate rolled open, and 4 machines crossed a threshold built to keep armies out. Inside the perimeter, the world shrank to angles and heat signatures. Warehouse 7, the crown node of the facility, pulsed on thermal view like a beating organ. Stored inside, an estimated 145,000 active units stacked across steel mezzanines and automated racks. The cost to produce each one might have been small, but the cost to replace a lost month of output? Almost $9 million per week, 2:10 a.m. and 40 seconds. The first drone hit, not from above, but at an angle that exploited panel seams and structural ribs. The warhead wasn't designed for shock and spectacle. It was engineered for placement. A puncture, a pressure surge inside the skin rather than outside it, and then a flash no wider than a doorway. Industrial destruction begins inside the lungs, not on the surface. Shelving buckled, casings breached, ignition compounds crossed their safety line all at once. A sympathetic cascade followed. Not chaotic, but frighteningly uniform, like the facility exhaled its purpose in a single violent breath. Lights died. Sensors flooded. A fire that fed itself instead of spreading. And here's where you, watching this, must ask yourself, if you were defending this site, would you realize the real strike had already happened? Or would you still be looking at the sky? Stay with me, because the next chapter isn't about flames. It's about what flames do to a command structure. What happens when a fortress learns its armor is only skin deep? Tell me below, would you have opened that gate? 2:11 a.m., 2:12 a.m., a single minute. But in that minute, the line between defense and helplessness crystallized. The Panzer battery, having just fired 26 interceptors in 115 seconds, 2 beyond its standard load thanks to an emergency feed routine, entered its forced reset. Cooling cycle, breech alignment, loader arm recalibration. A 71-second mechanical silence, not a surrender, a biological blink inside a machine. Inside Warehouse 7, the strike's consequences matured like a chain of falling gears. 3 internal gantries collapsed first, not from flame but from force redistribution along rail tracks designed for 16 tons per cycle, now twisted past tolerance in milliseconds. Floor conveyors rated at 900 units per hour froze mid-motion. Robotic pick arms, 48 of them across 3 assembly lanes, halted in their tracks, servos locked, thermal fuses triggered. Internal diagnostics attempted recovery cycles, 7 restart attempts in 24 seconds, but each failed under cascading alerts. Load imbalance, thermal surge, material hazard threshold exceeded, line integrity compromised, control conduit, B14, the artery moving data between storage and assembly, burned out under thermal spike. With it went 41.2% of routing capacity. Adjacent feeder corridor B16 seized, severing automated logistics between finishing stations and outbound pallets. The factory had not merely taken damage, it had lost its nervous system. Outside, the quick reaction force arrived in 36.9 seconds, 2 seconds faster than Doctrine. 3 armored transports, 1 mobile command pickup, 1 emergency drone cart. Sirens off, engines low. They expected a perimeter breach, a rooftop threat, a visible enemy. Instead, they found stillness broken only by internal alarms and the pulse of an industrial heart struggling to keep beating. Thermal cameras on the lead vehicle mapped the warehouse skin, 89 degrees Celsius and rising, concentrated around internal racks, not roof impact. Operators watched red halos bloom through steel where heat should never concentrate. A facility built to move 4,000 finished units per day now showed zero throughput and non-recoverable load fault. No walls crumbled, no roofs fell. It was infrastructure surrendering from the inside out. A plant alive 5 minutes earlier, now mechanically conscious of its own paralysis. And while defenders reset weapons outside, the site's automated backbone, once calibrated to run without pause, accepted a truth no guard could see from the gate. Production was gone, not paused. Continuity was severed, not slowed. Future inventory had shifted from output to absence. Long before that 60-second silence rewrote a battlefield, another kind of war unfolded. One measured in spreadsheets, intercepted signals, weather logs, and patience sharpened into a blade. Victory at 2:11 a.m. was not born in the sky. It was engineered in empty rooms lit by maps and monitors, where operators traced human habit-like terrain. Over 34 nights, analysts recorded the Saransk plant's pulse. Shift change at 01:58 a.m. Plus or minus 43 seconds. A supply truck arriving 12 of every 12 nights on a path so consistent it could have been printed. Communication bursts between internal security posts every 6 minutes, 52 seconds. Guard rotations staggered in 4-man pairs, always leaving a 90-second blind overlap between checkpoints. Every routine became a route. Every habit became a hinge. Signals intelligence teams captured over 917 radio packets, filtering them down to 11 usable authentication tones and a single routine phrase that mattered. Gate rotation confirmed. Stand by for entry. It wasn't just intercepted. It was rehearsed, spoken, replicated, refined until cadence matched complacency. Then came weather. Fog was not luck. It was target criteria. Models ran 6,231 atmosphere simulations to predict humidity spikes along the facility's south tree line. One forecast pattern, a cold surface inversion forming between 0140 and 0220 a.m., appeared 4 times per month. The strike window was chosen not by inspiration, but by math. Thermal satellites logged heat signatures on perimeter sensors for 48 hours straight, flagging one weakness. Commercial-grade infrared nodes rated for 6 meters detection fidelity, degraded to under 2 meters in dense moisture. Fog wouldn't hide the drones completely, but it would smear their outlines just enough. Even the launch pads were choreography. 3 concealed clearings, each mapped down to centimeter-grade elevation points, trimmed to tree height profiles that matched archival forestry photos. The Earth itself became camouflage. No headlines mention this phase. No footage plays back the hours of stillness, the quiet code patches, the deliberate waiting for weather and routine to intersect. Yet this was the chapter that mattered most, the one where the strike wasn't flown, it was earned. 0200 hours was not chosen for darkness, it was chosen for weakness. At that time, machines and people share the same flaw: routine. And routine is the thinnest form of armor. Saransk's perimeter defense had 3 layers on paper: a mesh barrier reinforced with steel lattice, a thermal detection grid with 78 infrared nodes, and a patrol roster cycling every 40 minutes. Viewed on a blueprint, it looked airtight. Viewed through weeks of pattern logging and humidity sensors, it looked human. Fog on the ground thickened by 68% in the 90 minutes before impact, a product of cold soil, warm air, and stagnant wind measured at under 1.6 meters per second. Where civilians saw autumn weather, engineers saw a tactically cooperative atmosphere. Thermal resolution fell, not to 0, but to uncertainty, that gray zone where software hesitates and hesitation becomes opportunity. The netting itself, 30-foot spans anchored every 9.3 meters, was designed to interrupt flight paths, not intercept a plan. Industrial defenses often assume clean approaches, but the drones did not arrive like threats. They arrived like noise, and noise is harder to filter than danger. Even personnel readiness tilted the scale. Most nights, 65 to 70 guards patrolled external lanes. On this night, logs showed 58. A 7-man reduction seems trivial on paper. It is not trivial when layered with moisture, radio congestion, and fatigue. 3 guards were reassigned to interior checks. 2 more delayed on equipment transport. The perimeter dropped to 53 active eyes at the exact moment it needed 80. Meanwhile, the Panzer battery, the pride of layered response, had already spent 56% of its interceptor reserve before seeing the true threat. Efficiency in textbook conditions became strain in real conditions. Reload crews trained for tempo, not deception. They chased procedure while the drones chased silence. There was no dramatic breach, no cinematic sprint at the wire. Instead, the defense collapsed the way strong systems fail, not through a single flaw, but through small degradations stacked with precision. Weather, timing, task saturation, and expectation all bent just enough. Not broken, just bent, until the line didn't hold pressure. This phase of the operation did not rely on force. It relied on physics, patience, and the quiet arrogance of systems designed for yesterday's attacks. By the time the guards realized where the danger truly was, The airside fight was already history, and the threat was already inside the walls, moving in the stillness they once believed kept them safe. 0209 a.m. The moment routine outweighed instinct. Alarms fluttered, fog blurred heat signatures, and radio traffic stacked faster than anyone could parse. A calm, practiced voice cut through the noise with 9 simple words. Shift convoy delayed. Open for rotation. Confirm. It sounded familiar because it was designed to. Cadence modeled from 11 real logs, rehearsed over 90 times, delivered with the tone of someone tired, not hostile. The guard pressed the release. 6.3 seconds later, the gate cleared, and 4 drones slid in behind a supply truck whose route had been tracked across 34 nights of surveillance. The quick reaction team arrived in under 30 seconds, doctrine perfect, engines low, sensors scanning the sky. Yet the threat was no longer in the sky. It was inside the walls, hidden where trust lived. The perimeter hadn't failed violently. It failed quietly. No breach alarms, no forced entry, just routine opening a door and data-driven timing walking through it. Modern defense cracked not under fire, but under familiarity. The gate did not fall. It complied. 2:12 a.m. had passed. The perimeter restored its order. The Panzer finished its reload. Radios steadied. Guards regained posture. Yet none of it mattered. The breach was already history. The factory's pulse line was gone. The automation spine severed, and a facility built to sustain months of output had been silenced in minutes. Not by overwhelming force, but by patience, timing, and the quiet exploitation of habit. This was not a battle of explosions. It was a battle of certainty, and certainty lost. Because in modern conflict, steel does not fail first. Routine does. And when routine cracks, walls and radars follow. If you stood in that control room, watching sensors flicker and cameras distort into fog, would you have recognized the attack in time? Or would you have trusted the familiar, right until the night proved it false? Tell me below. What breaks first in war, defenses or complacency?